Inside a dimly lit command tent, thick with mist, one of history's most brilliant military strategists sits perfectly still. But as the fog clears, you realize this legendary commander isn't breathing. He is a lifeless wooden dummy. Yet outside this quiet tent, thousands of elite soldiers are scrambling for their lives, abandoning their weapons in a blind, terrified retreat. Why is one of history's most disciplined military machines running in absolute terror from a carved piece of wood? In the brutal conflicts of ancient China, survival often belonged to the architect capable of weaponizing human paranoia. To understand this moment, we have to rewind to the 3rd century. The 400-year-old Han Dynasty has shattered, millions are dead, and the empire is fractured into warring states. The leading warlords of the day, like the powerful Cao Cao, treated war as a simple equation of mass. You build a massive army, march forward, and grind your enemies to dust through sheer physical force. Then there is Zhuge Liang, the chief strategist for the state of Shu. His state is hemmed in by mountains, starved for resources, and vastly outnumbered by its rivals. To keep a doomed kingdom alive, he couldn't afford to play by the standard rules of attrition. He had to stop fighting physical armies and start attacking the enemy's perception of reality. Under his direction, psychological manipulation became as vital to the war effort as logistics or manpower. Look at these terrain. These are the towering limestone cliffs flanking the Yangtze Matter. In the winter of 208 AD, Cao Cao marched a massive northern armada down this murky waterway, intent on wiping out his southern rivals. This tactical diagram illustrates a fatal logistical mistake. To prevent troops from getting seasick, Cao Cao locked his entire fleet together with heavy iron chains, building a floating fortress. Zhuge Liang waited for a rare winter wind, then sent vessels loaded with flammable reeds and oil, igniting a chain reaction. Because the ships were chained tight, there was no way to scatter. The fire swept through the floating platform, incinerating ships, men, and Cao Cao's ambition of a swift victory. At Red Cliffs, Zhuge Liang used the environment to turn the enemy's overwhelming physical size into a lethal trap. Years later, the strategy flips. Deep in these jagged mountain peaks, heavily obscured by mist, Zhuge Liang finds himself completely exposed, sitting in a remote outpost with his main army far away. Instead of barricading the doors and preparing for a desperate last stand, he orders the gates thrown wide open. He climbs up to the battlements, sits down, and calmly begins to play a stringed instrument called a guqin. Soon, his rival, the brilliant general Sima Yi, arrives at the gates with a heavily armed force capable of flattening the fort in minutes. Sima Yi stares at the open gates and the relaxed musician above. He knows Zhuge Liang never takes risks and is famous for setting lethal ambushes. Convinced he is walking into a massive hidden trap, Sima Yi halts his army and orders a full retreat. Without drawing a single sword, Zhuge Liang weaponized absolute stillness. He proved that a terrifying reputation, when paired with the absence of action, can break an opponent's nerve. Which brings us back to that dark command tent and the retreating soldiers. Zhuge Liang had fallen gravely ill and died during a critical campaign against Sima Yi. Knowing his sudden death would invite a devastating attack, he left behind a final order: carve a lifelike wooden dummy and place it in his command chair. When Sima Yi pursued the retreating Shu forces, he caught sight of that familiar seated silhouette in the distance. His deep-seated paranoia took over. Assuming Zhuge Liang had faked his death to lure him in, Sima Yi turned his massive army around and fled. His intellect had left such a deep scar on his enemies that his mere shadow functioned as an impenetrable shield, protecting his army from beyond the grave. As the centuries pass, the mud and the blood of these ancient battlefields slowly dissolve into the abstract frameworks of modern military doctrine. The borders of the three kingdoms vanished a long time ago, but Zhuge Liang's framework for psychological manipulation remains embedded in strategic thinking today. Ultimate strategic power resides in the nightmare a commander can successfully plant in an opponent's mind.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to NovaMind for more inspiring thoughts and ideas.